Queen Bee publicly mocks new black girl's looks, but her boyfriend's next move leaves everyone speechless. The bus pulled into Danmore just before dawn, when the sun was still struggling to rise and thin streaks of amber light barely slipped through low, heavy clouds. On the edge of town, past scraggly trees and dry cotton fields, the road was empty. Only a few trucks rolled by in the opposite direction, loaded with wooden crates and filled with seasonal workers. Black men in caps, their faces tired, eyes staring ahead like the road led nowhere. Like their lives had forgotten how to move forward. Evelyn sat by the window, fists clenched tight on her knees, palms slick with sweat. Her school uniform, pressed and neat thanks to her mother, hung a little loose at the shoulders. The soft brown fabric made her skin look even darker, what her mother called midnight black with pride, and her father called ancestral strength. Evelyn wondered how this uniform would look among white kids. No, white teenagers, white bodies, white eyes. The bus was the standard county yellow, chipped paint peeling at the edges. Empty, except for her and the driver. A white man, old and silent, with skin like dried tobacco leaves. He hadn't said a word when she climbed on at 6 in the morning, just gave her a look that lasted a second too long. Now and then, he glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She could see his lips moving like he was mouthing words, but no sound came out. Maybe it was habit. Maybe he figured God could hear thoughts, even the ones you're too careful to say aloud. As the bus turned onto Danmore's main street, the town had started to wake. White women in headscarves stepped out of corner stores, paper bags cradled in their arms, glass milk bottles clinking together. A line had already formed outside Maple Grove Cafe, where the white teachers and shopkeepers always had breakfast. The bakery window was fogged over with condensation. Behind the glass, two white boys were tracing smiley faces with their fingers while their mom bought bread. One of the boys spotted the bus and pointed at Evelyn, saying something to his brother. They both laughed. Not the sweet kind of laugh kids are born with. This one was short, sharp, taut. The school stood on a hill like a church. Red brick, white columns, a sign in black letters, Danmore County High School, founded 1910. Out front, the flagpole snapped in the wind, the stars and stripes flapping loud and proud. A group of upperclassmen loitered near the entrance. All white, all in the same baseball caps and Letterman jackets. One of them spat when he saw the bus. Another muttered, "Here we go." The group laughed. The bus stopped. Evelyn didn't move at first. Her legs weren't listening. The driver didn't tell her to get off. He just cranked open the door with a sharp hiss like he was throwing her out. She stood, stepped down, and as soon as her shoes hit the pavement, she felt their eyes on her, like mosquito bites. Tiny, itchy, poisoned. A woman in a yellow dress stood waiting on the steps, holding a clipboard. Mrs. Henderson, the assistant principal. Her smile was stretched too thin, like a mask that didn't quite fit. It didn't reach her eyes. She nodded. "Miss James, this way." No welcome, no. "We're glad you're here." Just that. Evelyn followed her inside. The school lobby was bright and echoing, with the smell of fresh paint and floor wax hanging in the air. Everything gleamed. To the left, a display board with framed photos of white students under neat titles. Student of the Month, Athlete of the Year. Not one black face, just American flags, quotes from Lincoln, and portraits of principals, white men with narrow mustaches and eyes like glass. Mrs. Henderson led her into the principal's office. Mr. Barton sat behind the desk, gray hair, college ring glinting on his finger. He spoke crisply, eyes never leaving the paper in front of him. "We believe in equal opportunity for all. You're the first from your school. We expect good behavior. Stay out of trouble. The rest is up to you." No warmth, just a warning, dressed up in polite grammar. They handed her a schedule, a campus map, and walked her to her first class, algebra. Kids turned to stare as she passed. Some bit their lips. Others turned away, hard. She caught fragments of whispers. Is that her? Damn, check out the hair. What's she doing here? She chose the back row. Mr. Harrison, the math teacher, glanced at her and said, let's stay focused. There's a test today. No introductions, no name. Evelyn realized they all already knew who she was, and none of them were pretending this was normal. During the break, she didn't leave the classroom. She stayed at her desk, staring into her notebook. Still, she heard them outside the door. They say they're going to be in school with us now. My dad says it's just until the elections. Then things will go back to how they were. She really thinks we're going to sit at the same table. In the cafeteria, she didn't get a tray. The lunch lady, pale red hair, skin sagging on her arms, just looked past her like Evelyn was invisible. She got back in line, tried again. The woman snapped, you deaf or something? I said we're out of lunches. Then winked at a group of girls behind the counter. Laughter again, not innocent. Evelyn sat at the last table in the corner. No food, no water, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. Eyes staring out the window, toward the open field behind the school, where an old water tower stood in the distance. Someone had spray-painted a slur on it long ago. Half of it had faded, but the meaning stayed. The school day ended late. As she left, she passed the same group of boys from that morning. One whispered, look at her walk. Think she's some kind of model? Another, nah, just a monkey in a dress. Laughter again. She heard it, every word, but she didn't turn, didn't flinch. She just kept walking. That evening at home, her mother asked, was your first day okay, baby? And Evelyn said, yes, ma'am, it was fine. Because telling the truth would mean admitting that this world wasn't just unfair, it was built to break you. And if you wanted to survive, you had to get quieter, harder, colder, like steel. And tomorrow would be day 2, then 3, then 101. Evelyn was wide awake before her alarm ever went off. The morning felt thick, sticky, like cane syrup. Air heavy and still, light barely breaking through the clouds outside her window. A dull gray glow crept across the floorboards. Overhead, the old ceiling fan groaned as it turned, like it had given up fighting the heat and was just spinning out of habit. In the kitchen, the smell of corn cakes and fried eggs drifted through the house. Her mama was at the stove, flipping them with practiced ease, and her daddy sat at the table, silent behind his copy of Air the Times-Picayune, scanning headlines that rarely brought anything good. Nobody mentioned yesterday. In this house, you didn't complain, because grown folks knew one thing for sure: things could always get worse. Better? That was rare. The bus showed up right on time. Same driver, same sharp little smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, like every time he let her on, he was doing her a favor he didn't owe. Evelyn didn't meet his eyes. She just stepped on, walked to her usual seat by the window, and sat. One day in, and already she understood. Dan Moore wasn't watching her out of curiosity. It was irritation. Like her being here wasn't just inconvenient. It was an invasion. Dan Moore was the kind of town where everybody knew your granddaddy's name, and the name on your mailbox mattered more than anything you could do in a classroom. Sure, black folks lived here, but there were rules. You worked in the laundry. You cooked in the kitchens. You picked cotton. You drove the bus. You didn't sit in class next to the sons and daughters of the people who owned the diner, the pharmacy, and half the farmland. At school, the air was thicker than the day before, the silence tighter, the stares sharper. Now it wasn't just surprise, it was resentment. Why was she still here? Why hadn't she run off crying like they expected? What made her think she belonged? In her second period class, English literature, Miss Watson assigned an essay. Write about your roots, she said, smiling like it was a simple thing. Your family history, your traditions, where you come from. So Evelyn wrote about her grandmother, born and raised in Louisiana, about how she worked as a maid in a white family's house, about the day she got the scar on her cheek from a hot iron for doing nothing more than sitting at the kitchen table to rest her feet. Miss Watson walked by Evelyn's desk, paused. She picked up the notebook, flipped through the pages and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "That's not exactly what I had in mind. Maybe try something more uplifting, like a family recipe or your favorite childhood song." The class snickered. Someone muttered under their breath, "Bet they don't have recipes, just chains." Evelyn didn't say a word. She didn't look away either. She held Miss Watson's gaze, not defiantly, but steadily. The teacher blinked first. She walked away. The notebook was never handed back. The grade came later. A plain, quiet C. No notes, no comments. At lunch, the same story played out. Evelyn waited in line while the cafeteria moved like clockwork, tray, scoop, until it got to her. The woman behind the counter slammed the lids shut. "Sorry, baby," she said, fake sweet. "Guess you'll have to come earlier next time." Emma Lowry stood a few people behind her. Emma, the queen of Danmore High. Blonde curls like a movie star, a smile like it belonged in a toothpaste ad, and the kind of voice that could cut glass. She was the mayor's daughter and wore her last name like a crown. Around her buzzed the usual crew, girls in matching cardigans, perfect nails, and laughter like broken ice. As Evelyn turned to leave, Emma said loud enough for the room to hear, "A little fasting's probably good for her. Clean the soul or whatever." The laughter lit up like a match. One of the football boys added, "Bet she eats after school." In the barn. Evelyn didn't stop walking, didn't show a single crack, but inside, her stomach twisted, not just from hunger, but from something heavier, from the ache of injustice, the kind that eats at you. After school, she was walking down the hall when a tall senior boy stepped in front of her. Buzz cut, school jacket, clean shaven like he was fresh out of boot camp. "Hey," he said calmly, almost kindly. "Don't you hear people? Nobody wants you here. You're making this harder for everyone, even the teachers. Why don't you just go back where you came from? This isn't a zoo." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't swear. He said it like he was giving advice, like he was doing her a favor. Evelyn didn't answer. She just looked at him. And for the first time, she didn't feel scared. She felt something else, heavier, hotter, anger, thick and quiet. The next morning, she opened her locker to the smell first. Rot. Inside was a dead rat, curled and bloated, flies already gathering. Next to it, a note, handwritten in shaky block letters. "Your cousin came to take you home. Better go with her. No one saw who did it. No one wanted to." When she told the principal, he just sighed. "Probably some dumb prank. We'll talk to the janitor." No investigation, no apology, no care. Meanwhile, posters for the fall ball were going up everywhere. Emma's face beamed down from every wall. Tiara, perfect teeth, arm wrapped around Zach Westbrook, captain of the football team. Tall, broad shoulders, ice blue eyes, Danmore royalty. Picture perfect. But Evelyn had noticed something strange. Sometimes after school, walking past the football field, she'd catch Zach looking at her. Not mean, not mocking, curious. One time he held the door open for her. Didn't say anything, just nodded. But there was no sneer, no sarcasm. That unsettled her more than if he'd said something cruel. Because white boys in Danmore didn't hold doors for girls like her. That just wasn't how things were done. One afternoon leaving class, Evelyn accidentally bumped into Emma. Emma looked at her like she was something she'd stepped in. "If you think you can stay here," she whispered, "you're dumber than I thought." Then quieter, colder. "No one will ever talk to you. Ever." But her eyes gave her away. It wasn't just hate, it was fear. Fear that someone like Evelyn might crack the surface, might be stronger than expected, might don't matter. Maybe even to Zach. Out in town, Evelyn could hear the whispers. In the laundromat, "Did you see that girl from the school? The one from the bayou?" You really think it's safe letting her mix with our kids? At the drugstore, when she bought a notebook, the cashier held her bill up to the light, checked both sides, like her money might lie. He gave her the change without touching her hand. She walked home through the back roads, past shotgun houses on cinder blocks, where the air smelled like fried oil and diesel, where her people lived. But even there, her silence made her feel separate, because not everyone was ready to see one of their own walk into a place they weren't meant to be. And still, she got up every morning, stepped onto that bus, faced the stairs, pushed open those school doors, and each time something inside her got tougher, like bark thickening on a tree, and someone, somewhere, was starting to notice. The rain started early that morning and never really stopped. It didn't pour, it didn't crash, it just lingered. A soft, misty drizzle that made the whole town feel damp and heavy, like the air itself had turned to water. Dunmore woke slowly, creaking through its old windows and mildew-stained walls. Neon signs from diners and drugstores shimmered on the wet asphalt, and umbrellas moved down the sidewalks like little islands, all keeping to themselves. No one stopping, no one speaking. The school bus pulled away from the curb with a roar, leaving a trail of water and diesel smoke behind. Evelyn was at her usual spot, staring out the fogged-up window. Raindrops crawled down the glass in lazy rivulets, blurring everything beyond it. Houses, streets, even people's faces. She caught her own reflection, dim and shadowy, and for a second, it felt like someone else was looking back. Someone who was just pretending to be okay. At school, the week was all about the dance. Homecoming prep had swallowed the hallways. Ribbons, glitter, and posters screamed things like, "Dunmore Pride," "A Night to Remember," and "The Queen Deserves the Best." Emma's face was everywhere. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect crown. She wasn't just the queen of the dance. She was the face of the system, the one that made sure everything stayed just where it belonged. For Evelyn, the week meant one thing: more stares, more whispered jabs, more mistakes from teachers and staff. After the dead rat in her locker, she'd learned to be extra careful, but the hits just kept coming. On Monday, someone tore her algebra notebook in half and left the pieces in the trash. On Tuesday, someone had scrawled across the girl's bathroom mirror in lipstick, "Dark don't turn pretty just 'cause it tries." On Wednesday, someone shoved her on the stairs. She caught herself, but stained her uniform. The geography teacher didn't ask why, just gave her a warning for looking unkempt. No one laughed in her face. They laughed behind her back, quieter, sharper, the kind of laugh people use when they know they can get away with it. There was satisfaction in it, pleasure, that she hadn't left, that she still walked those same halls like she belonged. But through all that filth and tension, there was him, Zach. At first it was nothing, a glance here, a pause there, the kind of almost moments you could chalk up to coincidence. Then he started holding doors, picking up drop pens, smiling. Not that polished photo op smile he gave Emma, but a smaller one. Uneasy. Real. Evelyn didn't know what to make of it. Maybe he felt sorry for her. Maybe he was bored. Maybe it was some weird kind of rebellion against his friends, his family, everything he'd been taught. He was raised to see girls like her as other. He didn't have to think about it. The world was his by default. Hers was denial by default. On Thursday in civics class, Mr. Mansfield gave them an essay prompt. What does it mean to be a citizen? Most students wrote about flags and freedom and voting and the American dream. Evelyn wrote about her grandfather, how he paid taxes but couldn't vote until 1965. About her mother, who was turned away from college just for being black. About how, even now, clerks in her hometown still bag groceries for white customers, but set hers down bare on the counter, like doing even that was a favor. She didn't shout. She didn't dramatize. She just told the truth. Plain language, real stories. But that was enough. After class, Mr. Mansfield pulled her aside. "Evelyn," he said, "you might be taking this a little too personally. This wasn't meant to be a platform for grievances." He didn't yell, didn't get mad, just looked at her the way some grown-ups look at kids they don't quite see as equals. She got another C. No comments. But what surprised her? Someone else read the essay. In the cafeteria, same empty tray, same lonely table. Zach walked over, sat next to her, not across from her, not a safe distance away, right beside her, like it was normal. He didn't say a word, just set down a copy of the school newspaper with her essay printed inside and tapped the headline, then stood and walked away. That was the first time someone from their side did something that wasn't for show. That wasn't fake. It felt dangerous. He knew what he was doing. He knew people would talk. Emma, the teachers, his teammates. He knew they'd see. The next day, the school exploded. Emma stormed through the hallway like a queen marching to war, face tight, hands clenched. Her friends whispered in corners. Someone said Zach had been pulled into a meeting with Mr. Mansfield. Someone else said Emma had screamed at him in the locker room, called him a traitor. Some said they broke up. Others said they didn't. But what mattered was clear. The whole town now knew the star quarterback had sided with Sarna, the black girl. And that was enough to set everything on fire. That night, the phone rang. Evelyn's mother picked up. She listened, didn't say much, hung up slow, like the receiver might break. "That was Mrs. Crawford," she said. "Said not to come to debate practice on Saturday. Said the format's been changed. But you and I both know why." Evelyn didn't say anything. There were no tears, no anger, just a hollow space inside like night without stars. She sat by the window that evening. The rain hadn't stopped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It just kept falling on its own terms, quiet, relentless. And she thought maybe that's how she had to be. Not a storm, not a flash flood, but water. That wears down stone, not with force, but with persistence. That night, she dreamed of Dunmore empty. Streets, houses, signs, but no people. Just her, alone, in silence. And that's when she realized what they feared wasn't her. It was the fact that she wasn't afraid, and that all by itself made her dangerous. After the essay incident, the one that somehow made it into the school paper, the air at Dunmore High got thick. Not with words, but with something darker. A kind of silence that carried weight. Tension buzzed in the hallways, leaked into classrooms, even clung to the bleachers at football practice. No one said anything out loud. No confrontations, no shouting matches, just looks, pauses, the kind of stares that said more than any insult ever could. Evelyn felt it like pressure closing in, like the school, built on smiles and silent rules, had finally taken notice of her, and now it was quietly, methodically pushing her out. Small things changed first. Her locker? Someone had slapped old stickers on it, ones that read things like, "Smells like the hood," "Not your place," and "Go back to the jungle." At the library, her card mysteriously disappeared, and suddenly no one could check her out any textbooks. In the cafeteria, trays would get flipped on her table before she even sat down. The staff didn't see a thing, or acted like they didn't. Like all of it was just coincidence, a glitch in the system. But the worst part, the silence. People who'd once smiled or at least nodded in the halls now turned away. Teachers who used to call her by name started saying things like, "You there," or just, "Miss." No one brought up the essay, but everyone who'd read it now looked at her like a problem, like something dangerous. In white as snow Dunmore, all it took was one label. Dorsey, she's angry. And angry in their code didn't mean loud or mean. It meant she doesn't smile enough. She doesn't bend. She tells the truth. Zach kept his distance. He didn't pretend not to see her. didn't ghost her in the hallways, but he didn't come over either. He stayed locked in his own bubble. Practice, parties, the social media minefield where one wrong post could cost you everything. He knew what crossing that line meant. The one most people didn't even admit was there. Now he was paying. In the locker room, guys had started making jokes. One of the defenders, a linebacker everyone called Hammer, tossed it out loud enough for the room to hear. "Hey, Zach, your girl ever hear of shampoo? Or does she just like smelling like wet dog?" The whole room cracked up. Zach said nothing, didn't flinch, pretended he hadn't heard. Because he knew, say one thing and you're done. Evelyn kept showing up, not because she wanted to, but because walking away meant they'd won. Each day became a test. Mornings felt like walking to the gallows. Hallways became trenches. School wasn't about learning anymore. It was about surviving without losing who she was. Then Friday came, and with it, a new hit. There was a general assembly in the auditorium. Just a routine thing, a rehearsal for prom, nothing serious. But then Principal Taylor got up to speak. He launched into a speech about tradition, pride, values, America, Dunmore, all that. His voice was slow, heavy, like syrup. And then, midstream, he switched gears. He mentioned how, this year, there'd be a review of student council election results. How some votes may have been collected improperly, not in line with school rules. No names were said, but everyone knew. Evelyn was the new girl who'd been voted onto the planning committee, the one in charge of prom. Now her votes were being reviewed. Everyone knew what that meant. She left the auditorium with something cold and sharp in her chest. Not pain. She'd moved past pain. This was something else, like a shard of glass buried inside her, quiet and permanent. No more shock, no more rage, just data. She logged every detail like she was keeping a case file. Survival mode had taken over. At her locker, she found it wide open, everything inside gone. Books, notebooks, photos, missing. In their place was a doll, handmade. Its paper face had a pig's snout drawn in pink, with huge crooked teeth. Its hair was a clump of filthy yarn. Pinned to its chest was a name tag, Evelyn. She stood there, frozen. Around her, the hallway carried on, laughing, shouting, alive. A pack of cheerleaders passed by. Emma at the front, flawless as ever, hair curled, dressed perfect, makeup magazine ready. She didn't even glance Evelyn's way, just muttered under her breath as she passed. In the end, the shadow always knows its place. Later, behind the school, just past the sports field, Evelyn sat on the back steps of the maintenance ladder and lit a cigarette. For the first time in her life, a sophomore named Junie had given it to her. He didn't smoke, just carried a pack in case of emergency. She was shaking from the cold, from her nerves, from exhaustion. But deep inside there was silence, not sadness, resolve. If they were trying to break her, they were being too loud about it. That night her mother noticed something different. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It wasn't burnout. It was a shift, a switch flipping. The moment a girl stops hoping for fairness and starts calculating. "They won't leave you alone until you disappear," her mother said softly. "But you weren't born to be someone's shadow." The words didn't comfort her, but they landed, like a spell, like a warning light in the dark. Evelyn already knew. Prom wouldn't just be a dance. It'd be a battlefield. And in that glittering gym, with gold balloons and fake smiles, something was going to happen. Something no one would be able to ignore. She didn't know what Zach would do. Didn't know if he'd do anything at all. But she felt it. If he didn't make a choice would make him. The whole town was gearing up for prom. Stores selling foil crowns and white satin sashes, girls picking dresses, boys getting fitted for tuxes. And Evelyn? She sat in her room, sketching the layout of the gym. Entrances, exits, stage positions. She wasn't planning to go as a guest or even a participant. She was going as a factor. And if she had to be a factor, she was going to be unforgettable. Prom night hit Dunmore with the weight of a storm you could feel in your lungs. The air was too warm, too thick for late October. The town followed its usual script. Storefronts draped in paper garlands, the local diner serving a senior special, parents pulling up in shiny SUVs, dropping off their kids in glitter and tuxedos, like entries in a pageant of denial. Everything looked just like it did every other year, on the surface. But inside, the school was breathing different, tight, predatory, like it was waiting to strike. The gym had been transformed. White balloons, draped fabric stretching from ceiling to stage, dim lights, and a playlist curated to avoid controversy. In the middle of it all stood the throne, yes, an actual throne, for prom king and queen, a monument to bad taste and social pressure. Like whoever designed this scene had either never been a teenager or knew exactly what they were doing and wanted to break them anyway. Evelyn walked in last. Not for drama. She was just waiting for the crowd at the doors to thin out. Her dress was black, sleek, silent, unapologetic. No sparkles, no neckline, no plea for approval. It didn't ask for permission to exist. It said, "I'm here. Deal with it." Her hair was pinned back with a plain metal clip. No makeup, no mask. Like she was daring them. Try to make me palatable, even for one night. As she crossed the floor, it was obvious. No one had expected her to show. No one turned, but everyone noticed. Conversations faltered. Eyes flicked to her and away, fast. The classic see-through look. Like if they didn't acknowledge her, she'd stop existing. But she felt it anyway, every pair of eyes silently checking. Do you realize you don't belong here? At the table sat girls in pastel gowns, with perfect curls and rehearsed smiles. Among them, Emma, in her golden crown, her body sculpted for pictures, in a face where beauty was weaponized like armor. Emma saw Evelyn. Of course she did, but didn't blink. Just adjusted her crown and kept chatting with a friend, like the black figure at the far end of the room was just a smudge on the wall. Zach was already inside. His suit fit him too perfectly to be accidental. Hair in place, shoulders squared like the athlete he was, always aware of being watched. But his eyes were unfocused. He was laughing with teammates, shaking hands with dads, getting the usual back pats. But behind the smile, there was static. He knew this night was a reckoning, that whatever happened here, he wouldn't be the same after. The ceremony began. The mic squealed. A teacher read off the names of the nominees for King and Queen. Everyone already knew who'd win. No suspense. Emma and Zach. When their names were called, the room clapped. Some stood. Someone whooped. Phones flashed. The stage glowed like a jewelry display. Zach and Emma stepped up, hand in hand, picture perfect. She kissed him on the cheek. The crowd swooned. Then Evelyn walked forward. Not to the stage. Past it, straight through the heart of the room. Heads turned. Chatter stopped. Confused looks. Sneers. Whispers. What's she doing? Is she serious? Who let her in? But she kept walking, right into the middle of the dance floor. Right under the spotlight, maybe by chance, maybe not, that lit her up like a confession. Zach froze, his face drained of color. He let go of Emma's hand. She turned to him, confused, but his eyes were locked on Evelyn. And in that moment, he chose. He stepped off the stage. He walked down, one step at a time, straight toward her. The music kept playing, but it sounded distant now, like even it wanted to disappear. People stared. Emma stood alone, her crown slightly tilted, hands limp at her sides. Zach stopped in front of Evelyn. Neither of them spoke. And then he kissed her. Not a polite cheek brush kiss. Not a maybe we can fix this later kiss. It was a declaration, a revolt, a kiss that shattered silence and cracked the floor under everyone's feet. The gym didn't erupt in cheers. It exploded in noise, gasps, screams, chairs scraping. Someone stormed out. Teachers looked around, stunned. Phones clicked. Cameras rolled. And Emma, center of everything just moments before, was suddenly background. Now the whole school saw it. A black girl and a white boy kissing like a Molotov cocktail. And everything those walls had been hiding for decades caught fire. When Zach finally pulled back, Evelyn didn't smile. She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Now you see what it's like, being this visible." He nodded. "I should have seen it sooner." They walked out together, no hand-holding, no running, no slow-motion dramatics, just one step after another, leaving behind a room gasping for air. And behind them, hell broke loose. The school wasn't built for this kind of rupture, and it sure as hell wasn't ready to survive it without cracks. The next morning, Dunmore was eerily quiet, not the soft, golden hush of a summer Sunday. This was a different kind of silence, tight, heavy, like the air before a storm breaks. Outside the school bus windows, the sky was nothing but gray. Leaves, finally shaken loose from the trees, clung to the glass as if trying to hold on, like they knew the kids inside were heading into something they couldn't yet name. But that had already changed. Evelyn walked the hallway like she had nowhere to be in a hurry. Not hiding, not flinching, no shortcuts. Her steps were slow, deliberate, like this place belonged to her now. Like every footfall was a breath she hadn't been able to take until this very moment. Lockers clicked open. Whispers floated down the corridor. A few heads turned as she passed. Some snapped back quickly, like looking at her burned. But not all. At the corner near the music wing, a red-haired girl from choir, white-freckled, someone Evelyn had never spoken to, gave her a quick nod. Just once. Small, but real. In biology, Mr. Ferguson set a test tube down, checked the roll sheet, and without raising his voice said, "Evelyn, you're next." Not "new girl," not "hey, you in the back," not "God, remind me your name again," just "Evelyn." And everyone heard it, felt it. No one laughed. No one passed a note. The world didn't suddenly become safe, but in that moment it shifted, just an inch, barely, but enough. And sometimes that's all it takes for the cracks to start. In the teacher's lounge under the gold block letters that spelled Leaders of the Year, the space where Zach's photo had hung, him in his baseball uniform, all teeth and ego, was now empty. Someone had taken it down, left only the gray frame behind, with little scraps of tape still clinging to it. It wasn't an order from above, it was a choice from below. Someone couldn't forgive, or maybe just couldn't explain. Jody didn't show up that day. Rumors flew as they always do. Someone said she went to stay with her aunt in Memphis. Someone else said she was sick. Another saw her dad loading boxes into the trunk before sunrise. People said different things, but they all agreed on one. The throne was empty now. Evelyn didn't ask what happened to Jody. She didn't need to. She knew cruelty doesn't disappear. It just waits. But she also knew she wasn't alone anymore. In the library, someone scooted over to make space for her. At lunch, someone called her by name. First, like it was an accident. Then, like they meant it. That evening, Evelyn walked out alone. Past the edge of town, where cotton fields meet pine forests, where the wind doesn't care what color your skin is, and the dirt makes no distinctions between black and white. Behind the gym, she found it. That red tree, the one she stood under that day, the day she refused to drop her eyes, had something new on its bark. Someone had carved two letters, E plus Z. No hearts, no glitter, just clean, steady lines. And beneath them, the outline of a heart, careful, honest, not for show, but a promise. Right there in the spot where they used to laugh at her, where silence was used as a weapon. Now there was this, quiet, almost hidden, but carved deep. The wind couldn't tear it down. The rain couldn't wash it away. The tree would remember. She ran her fingers over the cuts, felt the rough grooves, the depth, and suddenly she understood. It wasn't just a mark. It was an anchor, a truth nailed in place in a sea full of lies. Evelyn got home late. Her mother didn't scold her, didn't even ask where she'd been. She just looked at her for a long time, her face a mix of worry and something else. And then she said, "You've become visible. That's dangerous. And that's powerful." Evelyn nodded. She already knew. That night she didn't sleep. She sat at her window wrapped in an old quilt, listening to the leaves rustle in the dark. Outside, Dunmore kept pretending, but the cracks had started. Its lies had split open. And through those cracks, light had started to pour in. Faint, unsteady, but real. Later, when people looked back on prom night, they argued about all kinds of things. Who made the first move? Who gave up first? Who betrayed who? But there was one thing no one debated. After that night, Dunmore was never the same. Because one black girl in a black dress stepped into the light, not to ask for approval, but to show she didn't need permission to exist. And one white boy, raised in the rules of an old world, chose truth over comfort, and the cameras caught it. The stares, the whispers, the fallout. But he stood his ground. And when spring came, and the school board listed the year's winners in neat little chalk letters, someone added just underneath, E. James, the real queen. No one erased it.